And I'd like to call to order the
Research
Curriculum
stuff.
and Student Development Committee of the Madison Board of Education. I'm joined by Kathy Miller and Mary Ann Connolly couldn't be with us this evening. And we're joined by our Assistant Superintendent, Gail Hedge. And what do we have on our agenda today? And presentations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like to re-welcome Sarah Sandora to our committee this evening. This is actually Sarah's final lap in a 2-year process to bring the wellness curriculum, the last units of the wellness curriculum, the last grade levels to the Board of Ed for adoption. So this is also the final lap of 100% of all disciplines being adopted by the Board of Education. So that's almost 900 units being developed by our teachers, which is an incredible task and lots of hands. So, you know, from prior presentations that 100% of our teachers are welcome and encouraged to write the curriculum based on the standards, and they embark on a long journey, starting with professional development based on those standards, and then really looking at what currently exists in our pathways and how to improve upon it. And it also starts with a lot of student voice. We actually go to buildings and run focus groups and surveys, and that really informs a lot of the work that we do in reimagining that work. So this is really an exciting night. I also have to give Sarah a shout out because there are numerous presentations that we have done in the past couple of years about curriculum development. Our most recent one was at NEAS last week. It was the name of the conference was Developing a Sense of Belonging. And Sarah presented along with Ron Spears for human behavior and Jen Howling on the guidance and wellness curriculum. So we had a fully packed room of 50 people plus, and they invited us to put in for the national conference in November. So that's exciting. And of course, Sarah was front and center there. So thank you for everything, Sarah.
Thank you. And thank you to the board for all of your support over the years. Over 900 units. That is quite an accomplishment. So thank you very much. And also specifically, thank you for all of your support with this wellness curriculum. I think this is a pretty innovative curriculum in that we've combined school counseling, school social work, health, and PE into a comprehensive integrated wellness curriculum. We really took a hard look at what our students needed. The teachers came and they wrote and they really considered and had really amazing conversations about what they're seeing with their students and what their students needed. And from that, we developed the curriculum for counseling and social work, which you adopted last year. Thank you very much. And we continued our health and PE work this year. Part of our mission was to ensure not only the social emotional well-being of our students, but their overall health and wellness. Because we were looking to have students realize the different and varied ways that they can incorporate physical activity into their lifestyle, into their daily lives, and for a lifetime. And along with that physical activity comes the ability to navigate stressful situations. So we brought that into our curricula. So I hope that you saw when you were looking through the units that we're putting forth that in the standards, there were, for instance, in a PE class, there were also the CASEL, social emotional learning standards, the school counseling standards. So we really did take this opportunity to ensure that we were looking out for students' best interest in the whole child. So with that, I'm bringing forth several units. I did not list them all out because I know that you have them and there are many. So K through 3 PE 12 units, 4-5 PE 6 units, net games and outdoor adventures 4 units each. They're both high school electives. K through 5 health there are 13 units. And then in June, I won't be back, but I'm going to preview them a little bit for you. It's always a race to the finish. In June, I will be putting forth the 6 through 8 PE curriculum, and then 2 additional electives for the high school, leisure PE and lifetime pursuits. So I'll run through those quickly so that you have an idea when it comes down to June. I wanted to speak first about K-5 health. K-5 health was, as the majority of the curriculum is, vertically developed, but the teachers really came together and sat around the table and looked at what health instruction had been in the past, which was 1 unit, about 10 classes per grade, K through 5. And the teachers really felt that the concepts that were involved in the health instruction were really important, and I think we all agree. And while they said that they worked the health concepts into their PE class, this curriculum gave us the opportunity to ensure that it was happening and to really make a targeted push to make sure that certain standards were in there and to also align it to what the students are doing in PE. So we do still have 1 dedicated health unit per grade, but we added additional ones. So in grade 4 and 5, we also added a vertically themed unit of optimal wellness. And we also added health and PE units, which are combined units. One of our charges was to ensure that when students were in PE class, they were being physically active, because that was our intention. We wanted to encourage physical activity for our students, and we all know it's a great outlet for the kids as well. So in doing and honoring our intention to keep them physically active and also trying to increase the health standards and instruction, we developed health and PE joint units. So it's an interdisciplinary unit of sorts where the students are being physically active, but with a mind towards why they're being physically active. So for instance, when they're completing the Connecticut State Fitness Assessment and they have to do the flexibility test and the PACER test, instead of just doing those dry, okay, here's a test you have to do, talking about why the state is interested in finding out the metrics. What impact does it have on you as an individual? Why is flexibility important? Why is cardiovascular important to a healthy life? So that was a very intentional shift that we had to elevate the health standards. We also have some state mandates that we need to discuss. We have to discuss sexual assault and abuse prevention, and we also have to discuss alcohol, nicotine, and other drugs. So in doing this at the K through 5 level, we had a lot of conversations about what is developmentally appropriate. How do we deliver this information to our students in a healthy way, in a considerate way, and how do we approach it as they continue through the grades? So the way that we do that for the sexual assault and abuse prevention, for grades K through 4, we start talking about just general consent, personal space. What is your personal space? How do you respect the personal space of others? If somebody is poking you during morning meeting, how do you tell them that you're not comfortable with that? And then we take that up and we advance it as the children get older. You can see this little diagram in the corner, the circle of relationships. This is something that we put into the curriculum as well. And you can see that it sort of, me is the center, the immediate family is right around the child, and it goes out from there. And so we talk about trusted adults who you can speak with. Is it okay to give your mom and grandparent a hug? What about a stranger? What is the role of doctors and teachers? So we tried to do it from a really healthy perspective and talking about the students' actual lives. In grade 5, we took it a bit further as the students are getting older, and we actually brought in the social worker and school counselor to deliver this content. Traditionally, health and PE are both taught by PE certified teachers, K through 5. So for something as sensitive as this, the counselor and social worker wanted to come in and also be there and also put a face to a name, because as we intentionally did with the counseling and social work curriculum, we have been putting the support staff and trusted adults in front of our students from the beginning of kindergarten 4 times a year. So we wanted to continue that. At this stage, the grade 5 students would be familiar with the counselor and social worker, And hopefully if there is something that the student wants to talk about, they have that connection that's made. Alcohol, nicotine, and other drugs, K through 5, that focus is more household safety, medicines, what's the difference between a medicine that a parent or a doctor gives you, be careful of household cleaners, ask a parent. So we handle those state mandated topics with a real eye to the student's developmental level. K through 5 PE, and this is something that you'll see throughout our curriculum. It is not sport-based. There's not a soccer unit, a basketball unit. There are skill-based units, strategies and techniques, cooperation and collaboration along with sportsmanship. And so we really took a different spin on these in looking at the skills that are transferable across different games and activities, across grade levels, and intentionally building in complexity as the students advance through the grades and with their motor skills and age appropriate abilities. We're going to go to Polson next because we're working up the grades here, even though these won't be put forth for adoption until June. But just to highlight again the titles of the units, you won't see a volleyball unit. Is there volleyball that takes place? Absolutely. Is there basketball? Absolutely. But that's not the focus. We don't have 2 weeks of soccer, 2 weeks of ultimate, 2 weeks of basketball. We have, for instance, grade 6 unit 2, cooperation and team building. And that's where one of the units we're bringing the ropes course. Thank you also for that. That's been a wonderful addition. We have Spartan Challenge, responsible personal and social behavior, lifetime fitness. So we really revamped the way that we're designing these units. I just wanted to also point out grade 8 unit 2, this again, ropes course. The outdoor adventure course is really different, and I think it's really exciting for our students. When we were designing vertically, we took a look at what electives the high school wanted to offer, and then we intentionally designed units around those courses as almost like teasers, so that the students have an ability to try out these courses before they have the wonderful opportunity to select what PE courses they have. And outdoor adventure was one of those. So it's a new elective that I'll talk about in just a minute for 10 through 12 at the high school. So we put a teaser in grade 8. And this is actually a bridge unit because it is very weather dependent, as you can imagine. So it's going to happen end of try 1, beginning of try 2, and then pick up again, beginning of try 3. But it's really an amazing course where the students are able to, we've got fishing rods and orienteering materials, and they're going to build shelters and take advantage of the natural resources that we have in our town. Moving on to Daniel Hand High School. So these are the 4 electives that we'll be putting up for adoption, 2 tonight, 2 in June. Just a reminder of the before. Prior to the curriculum rewrite, not a lot of options for high school PE. We had grade 9 PE, grade 10 PE, and grade 11, you had 11 PE or self-defense. So we really were dedicated to making courses where all students can find enjoyment in PE, because not all do in a traditional PE class. So the way that we did it is we went to the students. We had the focus groups, and I'm really pleased to say that we honored what those students said in the focus groups. Courses like outdoor adventure, net games. Some kids love the badminton, some kids do not. So for instance, the net games, that is more of a collaborative, competitive, strategic type of course where students learn the rules, the etiquette, where they can play these for a lifetime, what are the local resources, but it is more competitive. There's often tournaments involved. Outdoor adventure is not as competitive. We wanted to have that for the outdoorsy kid, of course, but also for students who think that they may not have a place in physical education or may not have a lifestyle that lends itself to physical activity, to show them, yes, they do. You can go for a hike, you can take your dog, you can go with some friends, you can meet up with people. There are a lot of opportunities, and we really wanted to highlight that. And leisure PE and lifetime pursuits are along those same lines. For the more reluctant PE student, we wanted, again, to show them lifetime opportunities, more of yoga, tai chi, meditation, group fitness classes at local facilities. So that was our thought for the leisure PE and lifetime pursuits. So we are really happy. I think the before and after graphics here speak for themselves. And it's our hope that although students only need to take 2 PE classes, we hope that our offerings are compelling enough that we may have some students take more than one. Yes.
Next question.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't see in here, and I know it's jam packed, and I don't know where it would fit, or maybe I'm just missing it. But are there any units as they go through the whole vertical career? Are there any units on nutritional health and the connection between the gut and the brain and new science in that area?
We do nutritional health in the health courses. It's actually very heavy in the high school health courses, health 1 and 2, which were adopted last year, but also in the lower grades, we talk about health. Now, I can't say we specifically talk about gut health. I don't know how granular we got on that. But that would be a part of stage 3, which is a living document, as you know. So it's something that we could continue to incorporate.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Healthy and balanced eating, those things we have all
Yeah.
that are health units. For
Um,
last.
so the profile of a graduate, you can see we've hit probably hit every profile of a graduate. But you can see that analyzing, collective intelligence, self-awareness, and decision-making were hit pretty hard in our curriculum, and that was by design. Analyzing and decision-making came forth, and we were doing a lot of goal setting, which is a big push when we were trying to personalize our learning for the students. So by looking at your results, and of course not comparing them to anyone else, but comparing them to yourself and seeing areas for growth and making an action plan and setting goals, analyzing and decision-making often went hand in hand, as the collective intelligence and self-awareness. Collective intelligence, ensuring that you're working well with others, and self-awareness, how am I working well with others? Am I being inclusive? Am I taking a look at my areas of growth, my interests, my successes, in order to set the stage for lifelong health and wellness? And you can see we had quite the team, and I'm so grateful to all of them for all of their hard work these past 2 years. They really stepped up, and I think they did a wonderful job. I hope you agree.
So the reason why you have some courses for adoption at this next meeting and then some in June is because they're going through, the June ones are going through CRC review, which is that criteria checklist, and Sarah then goes back to the team. So they're finalized, they're all set to go, but they haven't gone through that final review.
They actually used a PD half day today to put the final touches on it. So they'll be going to CRC this week.
Great. Which is amazing.
Yay!
Any questions for Sarah regarding any of the courses before you, any of the pending courses in June? She's not going to come back again before the committee because we have so many other presentations scheduled for June. So I asked her to do both at the same time today. This is your opportunity.
Okay.
Sounds right.
I was just gonna say, like, the thing that really jumps out at me here is it almost appears like a complete ground up rewrite has occurred. That is, like, I remember hearing some of this stuff, like for example, the counselors and social workers were gonna be introducing themselves more to the students so that they learn that these are resources for you through the health plan. And we learned about that when we got presentations about the school improvement plans, right? And or school development plans, I think. And it's neat to see it in action in this curriculum. And I love the fact that our health and wellness curriculum includes such a strong component of social emotional wellness. And, you know, I had 2 daughters that did great with Jim coming through, and I had a daughter that has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she missed out on a lot of the actual phys ed part of gym. And health and wellness, and like the way it's going to be going forward, I think has a lot more to offer for students that don't necessarily take to the physical activity as well, and I think this whole thing is phenomenal, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I just wanted to say, I love that students are at the center of every decision. It's clear and evident that how kids feel, how kids perform, people, you know, did a lot of kid watching to see how things were going currently and how they could make it better for kids. Using, you know, utilizing their research around, you know, what kids are doing right in front of them. And I think to me, that is the ultimate way to plan and to create curriculum is with kids at the center. So thank you so much and thank you for the committee.
Thank you.
Once again, I mean, this is a great example of what happens when you go to teachers and you trust teachers to look at the best way to develop curriculum. Clearly, the fundamental thinking of why do we do this? Why do we do PE in health? What is the long-term and short-term outcome that we want to impact on our young people? Is evident through all of this. You know, that only happens, it's my belief, during Teacher Appreciation Week. When you trust educational professionals to do that, this is so far removed from doing the curriculum. This is shaping young people, and you know, clearly a lot of thinking went into it, but I love it, you know, in parallels with what Kathy's saying. I love it when we do that thinking, and even in the early grades, we share it with our young people on why is this important? Why do we think it's important? Why are we taking this approach? So, you know, I applaud all the work of the teachers, and I applaud the process that is nurtured and supported in this district that allows this kind of work to happen. Great job for you, great job for the people involved, and you know, in terms of this board and you know, the comments of you know, Seth and others. I mean, social emotional wellness in the whole child is what we are very much about as a board. And so, you know, we love to see it when we see people doing that work and bringing forth a product that reflects, you know, that value. So, you know, great job.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of your support.
Thank
Thank
you.
you again, Sarah.
Thank you, thanks to your team as well. This is-
Oh, they were
Appreciate it.
amazing. They were amazing. Yes.
And actually, Sarah, ending the first adoption cycle, now our refresh cycle has scattered leadership. So it's a little nervous moment for me. I'm trying to be okay with it, but you know, I think this kind of reimagining still has to happen every couple of years to really keep us on our A game. Which a refresh cycle is not exactly a reimagine. So, yeah, very much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And we're gonna shift gears a little bit, but not too much. I'm gonna invite Mike Ginsburg and Martha Curran to come to the table. And I'd like to thank you both, like, for so many meetings, so many trainings, so much work on behalf of the teachers and the leaders of Madison. So I'm gonna kind of bring us through a little bit of history and just some orientation to this evaluation plan and some of the legislation that goes through with it. And then I'm gonna have Martha and Mike jump in for Q&A or whatever missteps I take along the way, which I'm sure they'll jump in and do. So this is our Professional Development Educator Committee, our PDEC. This is our membership this year, so you can see that it's representative of the system as a whole. These are volunteers who come and attend trainings, attend half-day meetings, attend Fridays with me in this fearless room and windowless room to really think deeply about professional learning and also about what role evaluation plays in our district. And there is no greater board in terms of knowing and understanding the direction that we took some years ago. And it was a very firm stance that the board took 11 years ago in the last evaluation guidelines to say that we did not see the value in some of the legislative elements of teacher evaluation. And the one pager that I gave you, this is from the Marshall memo, which we just got this week, a couple days ago. And of course, there's a wonderful Marshall memo, reads like tons of publications, and Kim Marshall then synthesizes those publications so you can do a brief overview of what he finds most important. And there's this terrific article about what went wrong with teacher evaluation reform. And it really talks about some of the things that we were really opposed to based on the research. And sure enough, 11 years later, the guidelines have come around and it looks like we are more in agreement on some of the core essentials that the state is also now providing the opportunity for us to include in our plan. So one of the things that was required in the past was that you actually had a numeric rating associated to each teacher. So you had to report to the state a numeric rating. That was something that our PDAC, our Board of Ed, our associations felt strongly was a poor practice, and that really promoting professional learning and growth was the main target of teacher evaluation. We also believed in multiple indicators of student growth. We wanted to see qualitative and quantitative evidence. We wanted to see evidence associated with content as well as our profile of the graduate capacities. And we didn't want to see one indicator of standardized testing to be the worth of a teaching professional in the classroom for lots of reasons. These, the changes to the evaluation guidelines also start to consider outside factors like mobility in your community, like the ratio of high needs subgroups, special education students in a classroom, really recognizing that growth looks different for every kid and that we really need to be tracking growth in numerous ways rather than one way. And then also the provisions in these guidelines ask us to do an annual summary rather than a summary that's reflected in a score. So some teachers would end up with a 3, some teachers would end up with a 4, in other districts, not in ours. We actually reported in a spreadsheet, a very large spreadsheet, rather than one score. And then this idea of professional development. This has been a cornerstone of this board for as long as I've been here, is that providing high quality professional development to our practitioners helps them to stay at the top of their game all the time, and that they shouldn't have to leave our district or go to a program to have professional learning that's important and relevant to their practice and to improve their practice continually upon this journey that we're all on of 37 years in a district and in education. So these are some of the provisions under this new piece of legislation that the guidelines were crafted after. There was, as soon as the guidelines were discussed and this legislation was put in place, the state rolled out trainings. And you can see the names on these trainings. We signed up for everything. We signed up for a PDAC subcommittee training. Thank you, Mike and Martha, for being in on the very beginning. Lots of fun in the summer, August 8th and 9th. I think we had no internet. There was no lunch break.
Dungeon, it was a lot
No
of
food.
But you know what, we were together at our table and we had some really great conversations to kick it all off.
We did, and we were, you know, you could see that we had coordinators there, we had teachers there, we had coaches there, we had administrators there, teachers, the whole group, the committee. What was the question, our favorite question that they kept asking? So after these 2 days, they're rolling out these changes, these monumental changes. We're in this packed room of 150 people or something. And they kept asking us what question, like to see how we were.
The windshield question?
Right, windshield. Is your windshield clear? Is it really murky? Is it, And so much of the group went to, we can't even see through, but it's awful, and we're like, actually, no, we're kind of okay. Because I think we went into this as a good PDEC, as a good sound, philosophically in tune with each other and our teachers and professional learning, so.
And I think that's key. That has been my experience with this PDAC. So with other towns, some of them were like, oh, this is horrible. This is just, I can't get our teachers and our leaders to be on the same page. This is awful. I don't think I've ever had that moment in our PDAC through all the years. They are really guiding the work of the district for the right reasons. It's work, professional learning, and helping us all to be at our best. Instead of arguing about some subtle change in something that might be an I gotcha, there's a high level of trust and investment in professional learning. And that really pays off in so many different ways because we came up with, I think, an exceptional plan. You could see that there was training for evaluators of administrators 3 full days, and then evaluators of educators 3 full days. I can say, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was anything earth-shattering in all of those trainings and all of those days where we left going, wow, this is really shaking us up. I felt like we were solid on everything. Do you guys agree?
And I think with all the work we've done over the years, we were very much ahead of the curve. And that the state moved more towards us than we needed to move towards them, which made a big difference.
Yeah.
Which is a great place to be if you can wait 11 years.
Can I ask a question about that, Mike? I know you're also the teachers union president, and teacher evaluation has long gone back and forth between the state and how they want it to be done, how the unions perceive it impacts them and their members and how they would prefer for it to be done. I believe that there's some appreciation on the behalf of the local union that we've kind of tried to stand up for teachers and for what's a bit, more fair or highly regarded or preferred for teachers. And I just want to know, going forward with this new thing that you just mentioned comes closer to where we were all along, how do the teachers feel about it in the past?
Well, not all the teachers have seen this just yet, but the ones in the committee, I would say were unanimous in supporting it. Once we kind of had everything come together, so to speak, and I was talking with Gail, I said, one, it's compliant with the state, which I think is important for us as a community moving forward. But even more so, it's practical, it's meaningful, which is, I think, paramount for as a teacher. You don't want to just be checking boxes and fill out forms because that's just a waste of time. It doesn't really move myself as a professional forward, and quite frankly, it doesn't then move the district forward. This does that, which I like, and it does it in a very manageable way, which is another really important aspect of this. Where we gave the teacher something that was just so overwhelming and cumbersome to fill out with everything else that you need to do during the day. I don't know if it would get the attention that I think this is going to get and have the same impact that I think this one's gonna have. So yeah, I think the teacher will be very, very much on board.
I did have a dry run today. I was doing my rounds with professional development in the afternoon. And I walked into a first grade PLC at Jeffrey. And the teachers were working on their development, their final goal setting meeting, and they were working through it. And they're like, aren't we getting a new evaluation plan? And I said, yeah. So I was so enthusiastic. I told them everything. I felt like Martha. I'm like, here, let me tell you everything. And they were so happy and so relieved. They were like, that sounds great. That sounds great. So they were thrilled. So we'll highlight some of those things. So this is important to understand that the state came out with guidelines for evaluation and support. And the guidelines were defined as musts and shoulds. So that was the first document we got. Here are the things that are non-negotiables. Here are the musts that you have to have in the educator and in the leader evaluation and support plan. And then there's this best practices preferences. These components should be included in your plan. So on each page of this guidelines, they had musts and shoulds. So there was no efficient document to say, okay, so what are the musts? You know, we were going through page by page and it was a little bit where it contradicted itself. It would say, your teacher evaluation plan must do this. And then it said in the next defining moment, it may. So there were some must then defined by mays, kind of like shalls and wills and
It'd be great if they took this approach with the right to read.
maybe they learned, I don't know. So they did the must and the should. So then I asked Sheila to merge the educator and the leader musts together in one document to see the words and what was different in those. And by and large, they were the same. So we decided as a PDAC to develop one plan for both groups, for all groups, with the same forms, with the same components that really mirrored best practice throughout the system. So in fact, we kind of flattened the system when it came to evaluation and said, what's good for me is good for Martha, is good for Mike, is good for coaches, is good for coordinators. And we're kind of excited about that because we think it elevates the best things that we did in our plan and also unites us around some common ideas. So the PDAC then decided to work then the state came out with a model. So the difference, see the orange and the blue, those are the guidelines. And then they said, okay, we're gonna come out with a model. So if your PDAC isn't functioning well and you need something just to take and adopt, here's the model that includes some of the musts and some of the shoulds. And they came out with forms, and they came out with verbiage. And we took a look at that and we decided to work from that model plan and with the musts and shoulds and merge it with our own document. So there were some things that we thought we really value. We've seen proof in the pudding, and we want to keep those structures too. So we actually blended the two together. So we're hoping that we did a really good job with that. So one of the things that the districts have to do, and they changed the timeline a little bit, of course, is that we have to begin the school year and every school year thereafter with an evaluation program that's consistent with those guidelines, that orange document. So that means starting in August, we have to be ready to launch this, right? And we could either adopt their model, we can adapt their model, or we can develop our own plan and support it with evidence. We are sitting right in the middle. We're in adaptation. We are adapting their model. And then Craig has a wonderful survey to fill out and to put in this application. So I made a quick list of just on one column, what we're adopting and what we adapted. And I'm gonna focus a little bit on both. So there's a lot of musts, like no numeric ratings. Well, that was an easy must for us to do. We didn't want the numeric ratings and we didn't have them really. They have a tiered system of support. And so there's a level 1 tier, a level 2 tier, a level 3 tier, and then a corrective action plan. So we did adapt their tiered definitions. Multiple measures, we were there, timeline, we always had one. And this is kind of a new element in the must, a 1 to 3 year goal plan. So one of the big differences is that I can collaborate with my team to set a 1, 2, or a 3 year goal on an element that I want to improve practice on, and we can work collaboratively on that. And then you have to define what new teachers have in terms of an option versus experienced. And we believe strongly that new professionals in Madison have to go through a different process than those teachers who are tenured and those administrators who are tenured. So I'd like to bring you through a little bit of part of the big lift that we did in the beginning was to really look at both standards for our various roles and also rubrics that translated, because one of the musts is that you have to have standards and you have to have rubrics. So one of those rubric elements was a newly changed design in what's called the Danielson rubric. And we were using essentially Danielson before, and we got excited about this rubric. I'm gonna go a little bit more into that. And then also, we decided one of the elements that we really liked about our model is called the unit study model, that I believe many of you have heard about. The idea is you take an adopted Board of Ed unit as a teacher, and you look at that unit, you unpack it. You take different ways of teaching that unit along with what is in that unit. And you really look at the learners in front of you. And the observer, the evaluator, actually goes in 3 times during the course of the unit and observes the teachers and the students within the course of real instruction in the unit and sees how they are taking the work of the students and moving towards higher level learning from that. So it's a real kind of coaching opportunity too. We do the same with case study for special ed teachers and that, or social workers, they follow a case when they're new to Madison. But we didn't have anything for leaders. And we decided that we wanted to have a leader study model for new leaders. So someone new to Madison in a leadership role or new to a leadership role and from Madison engages in what we call a leader study model, which means that you looked at your school development plan, your district development plan, and you are observed in the context of moving that plan forward. And you're observed in faculty meetings, leadership meetings, and another observation of practice. So again, it calls upon Craig and myself to like say, let me observe you changing or doing the work in your plan. The state talks about a cycle of check-ins. It mandates that 3 times a year we do in-person check-in, which is a little bit more than what we're used to. We used to do mid-year, not person face-to-face. Some schools did, some schools didn't. Now we have to do face-to-face 3 times a year, which is a little heavier load for our evaluators. But we are also allowed to do collective face-to-face goal setting in the fall, which means a group can present their goals. We can do a collective mid-year, and our PDAC decided at the end of the year, we want a face-to-face, but we want it to be individual. So we want to meet alone with every teacher to give them authentic feedback about maybe where they exceeded expectations, talking to them about how their year went, reflecting on some of the components of their teaching and learning. And we're also observing practice twice a year in a formal observation. So this is an example of a must. We have to look at professional standards and rubrics with or tied to an externally referenced standard. So we're taking Common Core of Teaching, which is suggested in those guidelines. And the administrators decided to adopt the professional standards for educational leaders. And even though it's dated 2015, these professional standards, these national standards, actually rise to a more impactful model than what Connecticut had. And the standards are based on inclusion and more equity work and more 9 different standards compared to what do we have, 5, 4, 5, 3. So the administrator said, let's bump it up. Guess what? The teachers did the same thing. They took a look at what we had in existence that was mirrored after the old Danielson, and unanimously, they decided to go with the 2022 Danielson, which again brings it up a bit. So you can see the white is all of the things that the state model would say, okay, that's all good. And then the Danielson 2022 is our different component. That's us saying, okay, we want the newer model. But in the guidelines, they say additional examples of rubrics, you can look at Charlotte Danielson. So we did. So this is why we selected those standards and rubrics. Deeper learning for teachers and students, instructional excellence and action, and opportunities for us to be a coherent and aligned system. That's a should in the document. So here we mapped the professional standards for educational leaders. And this is the 4 areas of our school development plans and our district development plan. So you see in that circle, the blue is climate, that's one of our categories. Green is academic, that's in all of our plans. Yellow is systems, and the rose color is talent. So the district development plan, each school development plan has those 4 categories. And every year we work on those 4 categories. So then we took a look at the standards for professional leaders, and we mapped the standards to each one of those components. With the thinking that if I am a leader at Polson and I have decided to focus on standard 5, which is community of care and support for learners, and my goal setting, then in fact, I can share that with the staff that we're focusing on the blue. And it will map to the Danielson rubric, and the teachers can take a look at domain 2 and some of the elements of domain 4. And they can also pick something that is similar to the leader and kind of row in the same direction. Kind of makes sense, right? That's how systemic change happens. You really focus your efforts over time. And then, beautiful thing about the new Danielson rubric, you saw this in the last presentation, it's the CASEL standards for counselors. This is social emotional learning. So now our counselors and our social workers can all join in the same goal setting. We are aligned. There's no 5 different rubrics now in our plan. Special ed teachers were on our PDAC. They're like, I can find myself in the Danielson rubric. Librarians, I consulted with Don, and Don's like, no, I think library media can join in that. So now we're really able to create some powerful movement and some focus movement instead of working off of 15 different documents and trying to figure out how to make sense of them. So that's an extra bonus. That was a should, not a shall. State Department timeline says, and we just got this last week, they now took what we thought was a June 1st deadline for submission, and they moved it to August 1st. So now August 1st we can submit. And then they will review that submission, you know this game, and they provide feedback to the districts if they need to submit a revised plan. But that feedback doesn't come until September 16th. Well, we've already launched the school year of the new plan. So now we have trained the teachers in the new Danielson rubric. We've adopted all the new forms. We worked in a new system that Heather's working on right now for those forms. And then we're finding out like whether or not we need to make revisions.
And what are the chances they hit September 16th either?
Who knows, right? So we decided to go after the same timeline. So I asked the PDAC all along the way, every question, every member, this is my system. Every member has 3 cards, and to hear all voices, it was, do you agree that we should adopt the Danielson rubric after examining it? And you can hold up a green card, you can hold up a yellow card, or I'm not sure, or you can hold up a red card. We were greens the whole way. And asking the PDAC on Monday, should we still seek our board adoption at the May 21st meeting? They were all green. We want to move ahead with our timeline. We want to move ahead with our training. We have secured training from the Danielson group for all evaluators before the start of school. So we're doing a full day of training, and then we have virtual trainings for every building in the new rubrics. And then we're doing a rollout of the plan and the highlights with the teachers. They really don't care to read the whole thing, but they care about the forms and they care about their goal setting, what they need to do in the timelines. So that's our request, and I'm gonna stop talking and say, what do you guys want to add? That was a lot, or clarify, or.
I want to add something, that the state did not require, so there's a big rubric with 4 domains and 22 elements. And you pick one to be your goal and you work on going here. The state never required that a teacher look at where they are in all the domains and do a self-reflection. So we decided to keep that in. I think we've streamlined it from what we have and made it far more manageable. But we are asking every teacher to go in, look at those 4 domains, consider 22 elements, where do you fit? And that self-reflection is so critical for our kids to grow, it's just as critical for our adults. So that's one thing that I'm proud of. I hope
And
the
same
state
with the
doesn't get
leaders.
tripped up on this, right? But, right, and the leaders will
Same with the
also
leaders.
self-reflect, so that's one thing I think we have that is better than what the state is saying we must.
And I think we got away from the numerics by kind of creating, I'm trying to think of the words. Meets,
Qualified?
Yeah.
developing, meets, and exceeds. So we see ourselves on a continuum. And we also are seeing that sometimes you're developing in some of those elements. They are meaty. If you take a look at the Danielson new rubric, there's just so many, and I can show it to you. They are meaty. So to say that you are hitting every single one of those is a tall order. It's a tall order.
Yeah, I've agreed. So the plan allows a teacher to be a little bit more fluid, that you don't have to be so concrete that you are this. And that it's okay, you can go between two things and still be doing a very good job at your job and have any guilt that you're not at one level, all the time, which is a nice aspect of this plan.
I'll just highlight, this is standard 5 from the administrative rubric. And because there is no rubric associated with it, it's called a single point rubric. It is their standards. So that would mean that we're kind of looking at these elements and we're reflecting on these and say to what degree, and there's 9 standards that look like this. So there's lots of pieces. So you might be very strong in A and B. And you might say, I've got some work to do in C. Maybe I have some work to do in D. I'm strong in E. I'm strong in F. So really kind of creating that culture where we can take a look and say, what's my next level of work? And then if you look at Danielson's framework, here's 2A. And there's cultivating respectful and affirming environments. And Kathy, you probably know this rubric very well.
Very well.
So here's this range, this 4-point range, where it's unsatisfactory, basic, proficient, and distinguished. We are changing that to our titles. But now take a look at 2A, now follow it down. See where it said that one generic thing of proficient? Learning environments are characterized by positive developmental relationships that are intentionally nurtured and celebrated. So now that's a big interpretation. We like Danielson because now look what it did. Look at 2A. It is now taking that one element, 2A, and unpacks it to say, here's what we mean by 2A. Here's all of the attributes. Here's what positive relationships mean. Here's what sense of belonging means. Here's what cultural responsiveness means. Here's what positive conflict resolution means. And that is important to us because if I am working on 2A for 2 years, there's lots of work for me to do, but there's also lots of importance in the language being defined across the system. So I don't interpret positive relationships one way, and a teacher across town defines it another way. So Danielson did all of that work in this new rubric that didn't exist before. Before, it was just this top indicator. So we think it is so much more powerful and so much more important for us to really work on those pieces consistently. So that's an example of that.
So if I'm a teacher, what is the process I go through in terms of determining the goals that I'm gonna work on?
No, go ahead. So you speak, go ahead.
I'm always ready to speak.
Go ahead.
One of the things that's new that the state did require that's not bad is before you even set a goal, you reflect a little. There's a self-reflection piece. Where are you in your world, in your teaching, in your experience, and everyone, whether you're a new teacher or a 20-year veteran. So I think that self-reflection piece is one of the first steps in determining what my goal will be. And then
Is that structured? Is there a form of?
yes, it's step one on the goal setting form is, yeah, where are you? The other piece I think that helps with goal setting is there is great alignment because there's alignment between the leadership, the administration, and the teacher. Everything's driven from the school development plan, from the district vision. There's even a drop down that says, I think, right, what are you linking to? What is this goal linking to? So it gives teachers something to to look at and consider in order to develop goals personally and for their students that will align them with our school goals and district goals. And that's where true growth lives. That's where it lives, like that's how you grow. Yeah, really great.
The plan is written in a very logistical manner. So like you reflect, you pick your goal, then you explain how you're gonna go about your goal. What evidence you're going to be looking for, and I think that's like the beginning part of it, and then the mid-year, everything gets repopulated in, so you can see it right there. And then, okay, did you meet those goals? How did you, what evidence do you have that you met those goals? What do you still need to do? And it just. It's a plan that makes a lot more sense and just how it flows than quite frankly what we did in the past, and I think that's also gonna be very well accepted by the future.
So I do the reflection.
Mhm.
And I look at where I am in the continuum.
Mhm.
And then I set some goals in relation to where I think the school and the district is going. At what point does that conversation happen between the teacher and the teacher's evaluator?
So, right in the beginning of the year, so I think it's by October 15th. So
September 15th.
September 15th,
We agonized about the dates.
Um,
September 15th, the goals are set.
yes, and then you have the meeting, so, there has to be an agreement between teacher and administrator on those goals. And, or goal, you have the option for additional goals, and then, there's a mid-year meeting, and then the end of the year meeting, but lots of stuff in between.
And all the way along, you're kind of tracking what you said you were going to do, what you said you were going to collect, providing evidence of that journey. And there's always an opportunity, like if you set a 3-year goal and all of a sudden you're looking at that rubric and you're like, wow, I need to readjust and go into a different domain. You can always change that goal. And you also will get agreement feedback from your evaluator. So mid-year, if I'm doing my reflection on my standards, my 9 standards, and Craig is disagreeing with the standard, he can say, no, Gail, I don't see you as that component. I don't see you as needs. I see you as developing. So that also is a chance for us to have a dialogue about why you see that, what evidence you have and what evidence.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
If this is hyper focused, if there's, I think you said 4 quadrants and 22
Elements.
elements for each, and you.
No, all together.
Oh, all together.
All together.
Okay, so if you pick a very narrow, because you're supposed to, like, what narrow focus am I supposed to work on this year that I feel will be helpful to me? And you self-reflect and you work with your leader and you figure out like, okay, here's what my goals are gonna be. What if you're doing absolutely fantastic in that one little narrow area where you're focused that year per the process? But you're not cutting it in 4 other important areas.
You see, this is what we have over the state. This is why we put in the element of you will reflect on all of the domains where you are, and then the evaluators will also look and agree or shift thinking in that.
So you have an opportunity to point out like, well, also you should pick up here too.
And also remember, in addition to the goal setting, several meetings in the fall, and then always the mid-year and the end of year, plus the minimum 2 observations through a year, there is that dialogue. So I might go in and say, it's that you are doing a great job on 2A and give you a lot of feedback. And then in our meeting say, I want to talk a little bit about, domain 4, because that's what we should be doing. We're not looking to develop one element of a teacher.
Now, that's the very thing that was missing in the state model. And we looked at that and went, wow, that's really a huge thing of really talking through practice and having that dialogue. And it's also important that you see yourself and your evaluators see yourself in a similar way. And so before we were asking teachers in this school year, they self-reflect, and I'm looking at the time, sorry, on each of the 22, and they would rate themselves on each of the 22. Now we're saying, take domain 1 and all those things and reflect on that. Take domain 2, reflect on that.
I know we're running out of time, but this is an important question. Where does, if it does, extrinsic evidence come into play? Like parent complaints, students not performing well, stuff like
So
that.
every goal is associated with qualitative and quantitative evidence. Qualitative evidence is surveys, is feedback, is samples, student work samples, is a variety of things. Quantitative is more like achievement scores or numeric indicators. If in fact you are struggling in a different area, there are tiers of support also that we can put in place. So that tier 3 support plan is something that we would create with a practitioner who might be really struggling in a certain area. But before we do that, tier 2 is like, listen, I want to do another case study with you. And this time I want to focus that case study on an element about communication, because I have concerns about that. So that's a tier 2. It's more of a collaborative effort to kind of write that work. Where tier 3 is more of a collaborative plan, but very formal in nature, and then a corrective action. So there's all those elements.
Right.
By and large, though, most of your teachers are high performing and need to keep on a journey to increase their professional practice. We need to feed them in order to keep them stimulated and growing, and the same is true of the administrators. But we also feel very strongly that if you're new to Madison or new to the role, we hold the threshold high and we give tons of feedback against our standards and the way we expect them to operate within those standards. And that's been a very clear part of our plan. You guys want to add anything?
Well, I'm very familiar with the state evaluation plan over the last 10 years or so, which from my perspective was an abomination and really, put schools in the relationship with teachers in the wrong direction. It was totally an accountability model and not based on very good evidence. That being said, I applaud the focus on professional growth and learning that this plan reflects. And what I was listening for, because I think it's really critical and is essential, is yes, there's the individual and personal goals and growth that has to be personal, but it is contextual. It is about, you're in this district and you're working here for the advancement of some big ideas and some big processes in the district and with our kids. So, I see a lot of evaluation plans, which is, you think about what it is you need to work on, and then you tell me what you want to work on, and that'll be your plan, versus, you're part of you're a cog in a much larger machine. Your energy and your effort as you grow personally is to contribute to the continuing advancement. And, and I see that in this plan. Particularly in your last comments, Gail. It's an evaluation system is trying to do two things. Mostly it's trying to grow your teachers and your leaders. The other thing it does is it's trying to get rid of people that don't belong in. And, so the system has to have enough structure in it and processes for feedback and continued growth and intervention, but to be able to also get to the place where you're not meeting the standard. It sounds like this accommodates that.
Does a good job, I think, of balance speech, and I think that the PDAC, again, was so united about holding high levels of expectation. So even if I am selecting something that is a social emotional goal, the expectation is it impacts student learning in a positive way, because that's what the research says. So it still has to translate into teaching and learning indicators of growth. Instead of it's like right.
That's my point.
That's our business, teaching and learning, right?
And clearly this work, this is an expression of a lot of work on behalf of PDAC and It's greatly appreciated by the board. This is fantastic work also.
We will have a fully developed draft for you in your next package. But we are paginating and trying to figure out every single link and form, but that essence of the plan is in your hands.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Victoria, on this?
Yeah.
Zoe, we have any members of the public? Oh, thank you for your presentation. Make me feel very good that we have something that is responsive to, you know, our administrators and our teachers, and will continue, you know, to grow high quality educators in the system. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, we didn't adjourn.
Have a good night.
Oh, well, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Do you want to adjourn?
Yeah.
And we adjourn at
6:35.
6:35.